talking is exchanging words and communicating is exchanging actual understanding and emotions. So especially I see this in new leaders because I work a lot with and people who are trying to build a new career, a new profession, sometimes even a new lifestyle altogether that comes with it. And they think that their job is to deliver information, give instructions, set expectations, and share updates, whatnot. But the real job is really make sure that the other person actually receives it. And for them to receive it, they have to feel safe. So when talking is content, communicating is actually connection.
Many people want to be leaders. Fewer understand what it really means to lead people well. So what separates the two? Welcome to the Lead with Purpose podcast with your host, Merv Jerset. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with leaders who have been in the trenches and have stories to tell. They'll share their practical wisdom to help cut through the noise and get to the heart of leadership. So let's get started.
Hey, welcome leaders to this episode of Lead with Purpose podcast. Let me challenge you with something. Most leaders, maybe even you, think that negotiation and communication and all of that sort of thing is about winning the deal. But what if the real win is mastering yourself first? So my guest today is Eva Fanari. Eva, as I have come to know her and understand it, she has built her career as a real estate broker and a trainer on one powerful truth. And Eva, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what you told me one time was that every negotiation, every conversation, every relationship starts with how you show up internally. So welcome, Eva. And if you wouldn't mind, could you give our listeners a short summary of how you came to your focus on communication, emotional intelligence, negotiation, and the like?
Absolutely. Thank you, Merv, for having me here. I'm Eva Fanari. I was born and raised in the Soviet Union, and it was an entire system built on conflict. And it made me obsessed with one question. Why do people do what they do? Or even if they don't want to do it, and they will still do it. Because there's always a story behind it. And my question is, what's the story we tell ourselves? Growing up in the Soviet Union really sparked my lifelong fascination with human psychology and how entire systems shape people. And of course, how stories guide our choices. And I studied the history of human thought, which actually brought me to the United States. The last 13 years I have spent in the real estate world, and the last 6 of those training and coaching new real estate brokers and new entrepreneurs. And residential real estate is a very emotional business. And I always used to think that it's really unique to just residential real estate, but it's really not, because wherever humans are involved, it's going to be an emotional business. And this day, I break down the emotional and psychological patterns that shape how we work and live and lead.
So, yeah, and everything that you just stated, from your Estonian experience to what brought you to the US, everything, I think, if my leadership audience has not caught on by now, all of that, I guess it can come down to communication, emotional intelligence. All of that is so important to our leadership aspects of how it is that we treat people. So Ava, since I have come to know you, I have observed something about you, and I think you just kind of stated that. You have a passion to help people become masters of communication, of their own self awareness, perhaps. Not just in business, but I think I've noticed this about you that it's in all of life itself. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. It is now. No, Merv, you touched this when we just got started, and you touched on this again, but the importance of a relationship with yourself when it comes to pretty much anything you do in life, whether it's communicating, whether it's negotiating, and especially in leadership, you have to know yourself so incredibly well. And I feel sometimes maybe I fall short in fully making sure that people understand this. Your greatest work in this life is really not your business or the book you wrote or the service you provide or the product you sell. Your greatest work in this life is always yourself. Your magnum opus is yourself. And everything starts with the relationship with you have yourself and the awareness you have of yourself.
Well, and that all comes down to emotional intelligence, which I want to get to eventually. But you work a lot with real estate professionals, as you kind of stated in your introduction.
Yeah.
But if I strip away any industry, including real estate, what do people most fundamentally get wrong about their communication and their ability to communicate with others?
Now, most people confuse communication with speaking. These are two
Ah,
very different things.
yeah.
And people think that communication is about delivering information first, but the reality is that it's actually managing emotions first, your own emotions and other people's emotions. And the biggest mistake I see, no matter the industry, is really this: people respond to the words and or leaders think that people respond to the words and ignore the state of the person in front of them. We
Yeah.
forget that humans don't hear facts first. We hear threat. You see, the human brain scans for threats about 5 times a second. So we
Wow.
listen through our nervous system and we communicate through our nervous system before we are capable of actually receiving the information that is meant to come our way.
So if what I understand what you just said, that makes it makes my understanding in terms of there's a difference between talking to people and
Mhm.
truly communicating with people. Would you say that's correct?
That is absolutely correct. Talking is exchanging words, and communicating is exchanging actual understanding and emotions. So, especially I see this in new leaders because I work a lot with and people who are trying to build a new career, a new profession, sometimes even a new lifestyle altogether that comes with it. And they think that their job is to deliver information, give instructions, set expectations, and share updates, whatnot. But the real job is really make sure that the other person actually receives it. And for them to receive it, they have to feel safe. So when talking is content, communicating is actually connection.
Well,
That's the biggest difference there.
and as you were stating that, you're in real estate. I'm in IT project management, or I was. I'm retired now, but
We'll
coming from
see.
that, yeah, we'll see. But in both of those situations, those are high pressure situations, and so when you talk about this whole act or art of communication, it again comes down to that relationship, and again, it starts with self. So, what does that actually look like in a high pressure leadership environment?
Yeah. So when I talk about that relationship start with self, and especially in leadership, I don't really mean so much as self-help stuff, which is in here as well. I mean, our entire life is self-help. We're trying to help ourselves not to die. That's how life is. But in high pressure leadership environments, you as a leader, you get to set the tone, and other people around you, they they take they walk into a room and take the temperature from you always.
Okay.
And it's oftentimes having in our own mental capacity rise to the place where we accept the fact that we have that influence on people who look up to us for leadership. So if you walk into a room dysregulated, defensive, overwhelmed because something just happened, or maybe something happened during your commute to work, or something happened in your domestic environment, everyone else now immediately will start adjusting themselves around you and not around your mission, not around your message that you have for them, not around the task list. The primary focus for them is going to be trying to adjust themselves around the emotional state of their leader. So when we talk about, having a relationship with yourself first, or paying attention to yourself first, you have to notice your internal state before you start speaking. When you even walk into the room, because our body language will always leave an impression of what is our mental state, how we're physically feeling, are we actually present? And only then, when we are completely aware of what is our internal state, what is our body feeling in that instance, can we choose to respond the way we would like to, as opposed to react to the environment around us. So people aren't reacting to our words, they're reacting to our presence as leaders.
I think you just answered my next question that I was formulating in my mind in terms of what self awareness under pressure looks like. And I think you answered that in terms of you have to be aware of how you're feeling at the time. But What do you think is in that kind of context that you just painted? What do you think is the biggest emotional blind spot that leaders have who, by the way, who think they're good communicators?
Yeah, and let me tell you, it's not just the leaders who think they're great
Yes.
communicators, not just good, it's pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
And I know, Merv, we have had this conversation in the past, I remember, but most people think they're great at negotiating, they're great at communicating. You know, back in high school, they took a public speaking class, so they've got it down. But the biggest blind spot actually comes from that very mindset. Leaders oftentimes confuse their intention with their impact. And what I mean by here, they think that they're really good, so therefore they must be good, and they completely fail to read the room. How is my message landing? How am I making people feel? And this ability to read the room, it's we say this often, it's not as easy to do as we think. Because if we are awful at recognizing certain patterns within ourselves and being able to be aware of ourselves, observe ourselves, take a step aside from ourselves, we can't do it with other people. We just don't, we don't have that bandwidth to do it at the same time as we're delivering the message. But that sensitivity to the room you're in. How am I impacting people? That is just so important, because otherwise what's going to happen is that other people are just so busy trying to navigate you, and you just don't have the impact you think you're going to have.
Yeah, truer words were never said because I have, I've been in boardrooms, I've been in team meetings, I've led team meetings. And if you're not reading the room, and I think what you're saying too, is, as I understand it, and as I've learned to do it, a raised eyebrow is enough to have you understand that you're not communicating correctly. I mean, there's all kinds of clues that you should become aware of.
It is. And I think the lower lid flex, and it looks like it's so subtle and it's really hard to see. And I sometimes I have to wear glasses, right? And I don't like to wear them because I have stigmatism. And so it makes the room a little, you know,
Wavy?
floaty, like I'm underwater. But I have to wear them because lower lid flex is so subtle, and somebody just does a little bit like this. And now the question is, are they disagreeing with you? Are they unclear? And we need to get to the bottom of this right then and there,
Yeah.
because timeliness, like self-correction, needs to happen in a really timely manner when you are a leader. You need to get to the bottom of this right away. What happened right there?
Well, and if you don't, you end up sabotaging as a leader. You end up sabotaging your own conversation, your own impact in that situation.
Yeah, because in leadership, the power dynamics are a real thing. There is that element of authority that sets you apart. And when people question you, they may not feel safe to say it out loud that, hey, I question you, because their own safety might be a threat when they question a leader. But people always we always communicate. Our entire body communicates all the time with us. And we have to be able to pick up those cues.
Those are great points. Um, can you think of and can you provide perhaps one simple emotional, I'll call it emotional intelligence habit? Let's say you have one thing that you want to do, practice daily. What would that one thing be that would dramatically improve the leader's influence?
I would think that practicing emotional neutrality. That would be my answer.
Okay.
It's a mouthful, but here's what I mean by this. I'm not talking about numbing your emotions or suppressing, just neutrality and the ability to take your own emotions as something we have to question. Just because you have a thought or just because you have an emotion does not mean that it's a fact. It doesn't mean that those are not real experiences. They absolutely are. But that does not mean that it's the truth, absolute truth, and these are facts. And to practice this at any given moment when you feel sort of that sting of emotion, be it positive or be it negative, it doesn't matter. Ask yourself, what I'm feeling, is this real? Or is it just something that is familiar to me? Where is this coming from? And practice is not just in a work environment, a high pressure environment. Practice this in the traffic. Traffic, by the way, is probably one of our greatest teachers,
Yes.
at least in this country. It is, you can learn so much in a high pressure environment at 5 o'clock in peak traffic. Anybody can. So lean into this. But uh, most of us tend to react to old patterns and not present situations. We react to something that is familiar with us and we are used to reacting this way. Doesn't really mean that it's a required or an appropriate reaction, but to constantly observe what is happening within my body. How am I reacting to this? How does this manifest in my physical reality? Am I tensing in my shoulders? Am I squinting my eyes? Do I get tense in my lower back? What is happening?
You you unfortunately hit upon a pet peeve of mine, or I should say, a confession that I have to make. In my earlier years, traffic was my bugaboo. That was
Mhm.
when I would emotionally, within my own car, suggest to the other driver that they were perhaps not doing right. But here's what I did learn, and what you just said is that when I learned to control my emotions in that way, and actually I would signal to the other person to get in front of me,
Mhm.
I don't know how that person felt, but I felt a lot better. It's amazing.
Absolutely, Merv. Like this is choosing to respond, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to reacting. Because essentially, if somebody's trying to cut you off in the traffic, for example, because this is going to happen in any situation.
Oh,
Somebody will cut you off in a meeting. Somebody's going to intercept your thought to try to take over your training. Whatever you're doing, this could happen to you. Now they're trying to cut in, and most of the time, we now give the power to that person to control how I am going to feel or how we are feeling in this situation.
yeah.
But take the power away from you, from that person, and exactly do that what you said. Was like, I call it rise above. I tell myself, Eva, rise above. This person does not have the luxury in life to take the time to get where you need to be. It's the ultimate luxury in life, Merv, to drive speed limit. I learned this during the pandemic.
Yes, yes.
Right? It shows that I have created and built a life where if I am 5 minutes late, I am not going to get fired, penalized, humiliated.
Yeah.
That's how awesome I am.
My wife
Create
and
that life.
my wife and I just came off a 3,400-mile road trip, and I set my cruise at speed limit, and I can tell you, I avoided probably 5 or 6 speed traps along the way. So that's great advice for leaders is
Mhm.
just regulate, just self-regulate.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're in real estate, one of the biggest things there is negotiation. In my um,
Mhm.
particular experience in IT, we did a lot of negotiation as well on contracts. We've just talked a lot about communication, about regulating our emotions and that sort of thing. If I take that now into the world of negotiation, and a lot of my leadership listeners are going to have to be in negotiating situations. But if I take all of what we've just talked about, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make when they're trying to, and I'm going to use air quotes, win a negotiation?
Yes, they will. This is a very human behavior. When we want to win, we start pushing.
Huh?
So we need to have our presence bigger. So oftentimes you see this with men when it comes to body language, like the chest will puff up and they will lean in and they will try to be bigger. And and it does not work. Like I wish it worked. Aggressive behavior in this day and age, and in this day and age, I mean 21st century, is not a smart way of going into it. You can bully somebody into losing, but it's going to come back at you. And we see this in real estate all the time.
Yeah.
I coach my new brokers. I educate my clients. You're going to be doing the hard conversation at some point. Are we doing it at the beginning of the transaction or in the middle of it? It's your choice. Like I'm happy to guide you through whatever you want to do. And it's the same everywhere. So uh, the key here is to actually take a step back and learn to ask better questions.
Oh, good. That's
Yeah, I work in the speaking and training world,
yeah.
and the phrase that I hear often is, "There is no stupid question." There are no stupid questions. Yes, there are.
Yes, there are.
Yes, there are. Ask a better question. Of
Yeah.
course, the trainer is compassionate and whatnot, whatever, but ask a better question. Get really good at asking really good questions because a couple of things happen. When the pressure is really high, people are perceiving the situation as a threat. So the challenge you're facing is that their brain, the reptilian part of the brain, amygdala, is in the driver's seat. And very few rational decisions can be made when that's happening. But questions, however, they trigger the frontal lobe and they keep us in this conversation where everybody's capable of seeing a win-win situation and ask a better question. So that's number one. And then get so good at being quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Silence is your best ally no matter where you go, because most people will feel they need to fill it in.
Yeah.
Let them. Because leaders often think, and in negotiation, we think that we are in an information giving and educating business. Doesn't matter across board. No, we are an information gathering business. And you cannot gather information if you're talking. You're just giving too much. And you are bound to make a mistake. You share something that's going to hurt you later.
Well, and I once took a sales course. I don't know why, but I did. And one of the things the trainer told me was the very first person who talks loses. In other words, stay silent and let the other person fill in the void. And that's great advice for leaders also when they're in a situation where they're having to deal with team situations or customer situations.
Yeah. And always think safety, 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 safety. The safer the other person feels, the more they're going to share, the more they want to help you out.
Yeah.
And I do like the age-old trick to make the other person feel safe and important. Make yourself look stupid. Like, it's okay, right?
Self-deprecation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you know the answer, tell them, well, I'm not really sure. Help me out here.
Yeah.
Right?
So my audience, I found, excuse me, a lot of them like real world examples, for example. And
Yeah.
can you think of a time when you had a conversation that could have easily gone wrong and what you might have done to turn that into a win for yourself?
Yeah. It is. It's a validation. It's always a validation of another person's emotional state.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, uh, one of my greatest teachers in this life is my husband, and he
I've
knows
met
exactly
Marco.
he knows exactly which buttons to push,
Uh,
and he doesn't always know when to let go of the button. But if we lose a lot of our filters when it comes to our intimate partners. And I think that's why they are wonderful practice grounds, and why oftentimes the best practices you can have implementing in any tools in negotiating or communication is in your domestic environment. Sometimes your mom works really well as well, because they trigger a lot of us, if you still have a mom. But in the middle of a heated conversation, it's just, again, like, take that pause and say, okay, I see your point. Just agree with them just for a little bit, because that's what they really want. They want to feel safe and validated. And it's the same in the business environment as well. And I'm trying more desperately to think of a specific.
you don't have to. It's fine.
Okay.
The domestic one works well. And by the way, I have met your young daughter, and I bet she can give you a run for your money as well.
She can give me the run for my money, exactly, because I am the mom, and so I trigger her, and we start butting heads. And so the place I want to go to is, you don't sass me, or you don't talk like this, so don't back talk. Just hear what I have to say. But that's really not the way to go about it. And if I validate her emotions, like, I'll tell her something as simple as, hey, I think you're sick. This is a conversation I had just recently. Well, you're sick. You had a fever not even 12 hours ago, and now you think you're going to go to swim practice in a cold chlorinated water for 2 hours. I don't think you should go. And she said, well, it's not such a big deal. Like, I feel pretty good. I'm like, no. I said, no. Instead of me asking, like, looking back, a better question would have been, or better approach in this instance would have been, well, tell me, why is this so important to you?
Good.
Why is this more important to you than taking a break and giving your body a chance to recover?
Yeah.
I don't know the motivation, and neither am I interested in hearing this motivation, because I need to win this, right?
Uh-huh.
but like she needs to do what I do. And I failed. I should have known better.
So
But
you're still practicing, Eva.
I am still practicing every day. In my work environment, I do so much better. And then I go home and half the stuff just goes out the window. I don't know what happens, but you self-correct. You self-correct. And a good leader corrects right away. When you recognize that you need to correct yourself, you broach this conversation. So I did this with my daughter and I said, me raising my voice and trying to shut you down is not the way to go about it. So
Just switching conversation a little bit, I'm referring back to how you introduced yourself. My grandparents, both sides, both my dad's and my mom's parents, came to Canada from Eastern Europe. And they would tell me of some of the things that helped shape them and their understanding of human relationships, and that growing up under or living under fairly austere situations. You mentioned you came from the former Soviet Union.
mhm.
How did growing up as a child in that environment shape the way that you see now communication, relationships, negotiations, and all of that sort of thing that we've been talking about?
Yeah. Well, there are definitely cultural differences,
Yeah.
but Americans tend to be very positive. It is okay in this culture to express the positive emotions and not the negative ones. So Americans have become masters at suppressing and hiding the negative emotions. I come from a radically opposite culture where showing anything positive is considered, what's wrong with you? Are you not that smart? And expressing negative emotions is the norm. But I have they both of these communication styles have their upsides and their downsides. Suppressed anger and suppressed negative emotions have a pretty negative consequence on people in general. And it has definitely my upbringing and my background has really made me obsessed, I would say, about why we behave the way we do, why we think the way we do. What's the story we tell ourselves? And I was lucky enough when I was growing up that I come from a family that was deeply suspicious and anti regime.
Mm.
And so the resistance can take so many different forms. But any sort of suppressed emotion is going to turn into some sort of resistance within us. It's going to start rearing its head. And the resistance I saw, especially from my father's side, was kind of more straightforward. I remember my uncle, my youngest uncle, I have a lot of them, would teach us anti-regime songs and poetry. And he would close the door and curtains and would tell us, because he was only like 7 years older than I was, and well, still is. And he would say, like, you are not allowed to sing this song outside of this room. And to this day, I remember these songs.
Mhm.
It was incredible. It was like this silent resistance, and that's what kept a lot of people sane. And but on my mother's side, my family was more kind of willing to play the game and undermine the system from within the game, as opposed to trying to stay separate from the game and then try to resist it this way. But that resistance to the regime or authority is definitely that got really rooted deeply into people. And it does not just have to happen when you live under dictatorship. It happens in any sort of environment, any society. And I think a grade school is a really good example of this, where people start early on, kids start early on learning that, there is teachers, there's the authority, and then there's us, and we have to rebel against the system here. I will not do my homework. I'll be really happy when I get to skip class. I'll be really happy if the class ends early. And we don't really understand that who we're really hurting is ourselves. And that lesson doesn't come when we now are out of grade school or when we're out of a dictatorship, like it happened with Estonia and the entire Soviet bloc. That the skill set to resist and to cheat the system, to undermine it, is so embedded in us. But once we are adults and once we are sort of independent and free, the person we end up actually undermining is ourselves. And I see this a lot with people. I see
Well,
this a
so I congratulate you on doing a what I say 180-degree turn from how you could have turned out to
Mhm.
how you now look at the world and relationships and human interaction and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Well, it's a work in progress,
Yeah,
but self-sabotage is way deeper than just, being tired or being overwhelmed or and there is, trauma and there's a lot that goes into there, but a lot of it is also learned behavior from the first 20 years of life.
oh, sure. Well, our time is starting to draw to an end here. In fact, it probably is, but I have another fairly a deep question for you that just occurred to me is in this whole idea that we've talked about and all of the aspects that go into who we are as people and how we relate. When you are in a conversation with someone and you walk away from that conversation, what tells you that you came across correctly, that it worked for you and for the other person?
This is a very deep question, Merv, and it's a very long answer to this one, but I'll
What
keep it
what a way
brief.
to end, right?
Right? I'll keep it really brief. There is really no telltale sign other than I'm going to say this, so hold on to your chair, than your gut feeling.
Um,
It's that intuition. It's
yep.
that deep. You have to really know yourself and be so good at analyzing your relationships and how you showed up, because what makes you connect with another person is your ability to show up into that communication and do the best you can in that situation, considering what you're facing.
And so if you
But-
go
Yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
No, I was gonna just say, Merv, that for me, it's that intuitive knowledge that it go, well, we don't I don't have to have a win-win situation, and I don't have to have necessarily this deep satisfaction that everything is good and there's rainbows and unicorns uh, all around us. No, it's the fact that I showed up to connect and I gave space. I left space to the other person's nervous system to begin to downregulate and feel safe around me. I'm looking for those safety cues. Even if we still disagree, I want to make sure that I made that environment safe. Of course, if this is my goal, if my goal is to not make it safe, then of course that goes out the window. But
But that really comes down to every leadership environment is how you come across to those you lead, to your peers who you influence, and even to your upper management who you also influence. The way you come across to them through that need to make them feel important is more important than how they actually turn out. Now, I'm not saying this correctly, but actually how they turn out feeling is somewhat on them, but as long as you come across with the intent of making them feel like they're part of that conversation positively, then you should end
Mhm.
up with a win-win most of the time.
Yes.
All right. I love to end these conversations with some quick questions and answers. And let me start off with an easy one. What's a book that has influenced you?
So many books have influenced me, and I know that's not the answer you want. It's sort of like asking you have 10 kids and which one is your favorite.
Here we go.
Those 10 kids are favorite in different categories. But a book that has really left an impact in the last year for me was the Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. And not the 48 Laws of Power, but the Laws of Human Nature, because he really sort of analyzes the shadow part of the human nature that comes into every negotiation and every single communication or relationship that we have. But the most recent one that I just recently started reading is by Brené Brown, and it's Strong Ground. I like that. It makes me think and makes me question the way I see leadership. Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think is one of the biggest communication mistakes a leader might make?
They don't know when to shut up.
That's great. Tough conversations with people on your team, sooner or later?
Oh, sooner or later.
Oh,
Not everything requires your immediate involvement. Some conversations, just because it was presented to you, does not mean you need to accept and engage with it at all. This is a judgment call, and that's the
yeah.
sign of a great leader, knowing what to engage with and what not to engage with.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to drop something because it's not that important, right?
It's not that important. Sometimes don't even like it's so far off. This is not worthy of your attention and energy at all.
Yeah. You touched on this earlier, silence. Awkward or powerful?
Powerful, always powerful.
Yeah. I guess if it's awkward, it's because the person made it awkward for themselves, right? What's one word in your mind that defines great leadership?
Curiosity.
Oh, I like that. How about an easy, really easy one? Do you prefer a coffee meeting or a walking meeting?
Walking meeting.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Because it stimulates things, right? It just keeps going.
Makes you think, makes the brain think forward.
Yeah.
So from the brain perspective, and I'm not a coffee drinker. It's always awkward. We go to Starbucks and I don't know what to do there with myself. So I order this weird coffee that I'm not going to drink anyways. And so no, walking, fresh air.
Fresh
Yeah,
air.
let's make it interesting.
Well, and I know you're also an outdoors person, so I bet the best place for you to think clearly is outdoors rather than indoors, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Well, Eva, this was definitely a powerful conversation. I want to really thank you for bringing it. You and I are good friends. And so, as a result of that, I think we were able to connect at a deeper level in terms of what we wanted to share with our audience. But give our audience an understanding of where they might be able to connect with you, whether they want to understand your services. Tell us about services you offer outside of your outside of your day job and that sort of thing.
Yes. So these two areas are pretty mixed, but I help new and also experienced, but people who are looking to build a life. Essentially, they're looking to build a career. They're looking to build a life's change or changed life. They're looking to build a business, and I provide emotional support going through it. So there's so much information more out there about how
Right.
to get more leads and how to close more deals and how to perform better. But all that aside, what's really important is how do you take care of yourself and how do you learn to have that relationship with yourself as well so you actually can keep showing up for your business and your profession and your whatever you're building in your life. So you can find me on Substack. You
Okay.
can find me on Instagram, and it's very simple. My handle is Eva Fanari, and my website is evafanari.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Would love
And
to connect with you.
and phonetically spelling that, that's EvaFanari, right?
Yes,
I
that's
got
what
that
it
right.
is.
That's what it is. Well, for my audience, here's what I hope that you will take away from today's conversation. Um, Based on what Ava and I just talked about and what she presented, is that great leaders, in my mind and in her, certainly in her mind, don't rise because they talk more. They rise because they understand more, and they start with understanding themselves, then others, and then the moment, and that's right there in front of them. So I would say from our conversation is that communication is not a skill that you add on to whatever it is you do in life. It's the foundation of everything that you do and that you stand on. So if you want to lead smarter, not harder, start paying attention to how you show up in every conversation, because every conversation is a leadership moment. So, to all of you listening today, keep leading with purpose.
If today's conversation added value, make sure you subscribe. And if this episode resonated, please leave a quick review to help other leaders discover the show. And remember, leadership works best when you put people first. Let's lead with purpose, together.